When I moved into my grandmother's old house a few months ago, I felt a strange mix of comfort and unease. I had just turned 26 and hoped to renovate the place and sell it. City life had worn me out, and I wanted a fresh start. The house smelled like mothballs, and it was filled with dusty antiques. It felt like stepping back in time. One afternoon, while I was sorting through boxes in the attic, I found an ornate mirror under a tattered blanket. It looked out of place. When I wiped it clean, I could have sworn I saw a face in the glass. It flickered before vanishing. I shook my head, thinking I was just tired from unpacking. That night I heard soft tapping sounds. They came from somewhere above me. I laid in bed, too scared to investigate. The next day, I noticed small items were missing or moved around the house. It made me feel uneasy. I thought I was losing my mind. As the days went by, the tapping got louder. I felt cold spots in warm rooms. Shadows darted in my peripheral vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had awakened something. I wished I hadn't found that mirror, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. One evening, I decided to go to the attic for a closer look. My heart raced as I approached the mirror again. It felt like ice running down my spine, but I was determined to see what I might find. I touched the glass carefully. It shimmered, and I didn't see anything until I sensed a shadow behind me. I whipped around but saw nothing. My breath hitched in my throat. I tried to shake it off and left the attic. I think I was more unsettled than ever. The tapping noise became more constant. I yelled into the silence, "Is someone there?" My voice echoed back at me. Then there was a night that made everything worse. I sat in my living room, alone, when I heard the tapping again. This time it was right above me, closer. I felt dread wash over me. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence. Then I felt a cold breath against my neck. My blood ran cold. I spun around, but the room was empty. I felt like I was being watched. I slumped down on the couch, terrified. What was happening? I didn't know what to think. I went to bed that night with every light on. I hoped I could drown out whatever was lurking in the shadows. Days turned into weeks, but the tapping never stopped. I didn't feel safe. The mirror haunted my thoughts. I considered getting rid of it, but a part of me felt drawn to it. I didn't want to find out the truth. I wanted to run away. I had never been so scared in my life, and yet here I was. That mirror, the tapping, it was all too much. I kept asking myself what I had awoken. The unsettling presence felt so close. I wasn't sure if it would ever leave. I never wanted to learn what lay beneath that glass. The next morning I woke up feeling groggy, but still unsettled. The tapping had become a part of my routine, echoing in my mind as I tried to focus on unpacking. I made myself some coffee and sat at the kitchen table, determined to put my fears aside. I needed to figure out my plan for the house, how I would renovate it and sell it quickly. But as I sipped my coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The air felt heavier, almost charged. I glanced at the hallway leading to the attic. A flicker of movement in my peripheral vision caught my attention, but when I turned, nothing was there. I decided to avoid the attic for a while. Maybe if I ignored the mirror, whatever was haunting me would also fade away. But my resolve weakened as the day dragged on. After dinner, I heard a louder thud upstairs. It wasn't just tapping, it sounded like something had fallen. I felt a pull, a gnawing curiosity that made my heart race. I grabbed a flashlight and reluctantly made my way back up to the attic, the thoughts swirling in my mind. What if it was just an old beam settling? Maybe I was being paranoid. When I reached the attic, the musty smell hit me harder than before. Dust particles danced in the beam of my flashlight. I hesitated outside the door, my hand hovering at the knob. With a deep breath, I opened it, the creaking door sending a shiver through me. The mirror caught my eye immediately, glimmering strangely in the dim light. I stepped closer, my heart thudding in my chest. That feeling of unease washed over me once more. I needed to know what was behind that surface. I leaned in, staring hard at my reflection. And that's when I saw it, a figure in the mirror behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I spun around. There was nothing, just the empty attic. I swung back to the mirror. The figure was gone, but I could feel its presence, thick in the air. It was as if the mirror was alive. I felt compelled to speak, a mix of fear and anger bubbling up. "What do you want?" I yelled, my voice echoing in the quiet space. Nothing. Then I heard a haunting whisper. It was barely audible but cut through the silence like ice. "Help me." A ghostly chill washed over me, raising the hair on my arms. I stumbled back, the flashlight shaking in my grip. I was terrified. Questions raced through my mind. Who was it? Why did it need help? I backed away from the mirror, my instincts telling me to flee. But before I could turn, the light flickered and dimmed. Shadows danced around me, making me freeze in place. Everything went dark, and my breath quickened. I felt disoriented, unsteady on my feet. I was lost in the dark, trapped in my grandmother's attic with something I didn't understand. Fear gripped me, nearly paralyzing. Then from the darkness came the tapping again, almost rhythmic, insistent. It felt closer this time. My heart thrummed loudly in my ears, drowning out all sound. I could feel it moving, whatever it was, inching toward me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay. I needed light. I needed to escape. Just as I turned to flee, I saw the glimmer of the mirror, a faint light spilling from its frame. An image began to form, and I froze again. This time, dread washed over me. It was a face, staring back with hollow eyes. The question screamed in my mind. What was it trying to show me? I stood frozen, staring at the face in the mirror. It wasn't my own. The hollow eyes seemed to bore directly into my soul, and a chill wrapped around me like a cold shroud. I could hardly breathe. The connection felt otherworldly, as if I were being pulled into something I didn't belong to. The tapping echoed louder now, punctuating the silence like a heartbeat. I wanted to look away, to shut my eyes tight and ignore it all. But I couldn't. A deep need to understand overpowered my fear. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice shaky. The air grew heavy again. The face shifted ever so slightly, an expression passing over it that I couldn't quite decipher. Was it sadness, anger, or desperation? The whispering returned, louder this time. "Help me, please." I stepped back, my heart racing. My instincts screamed for me to run, but something rooted me in place. I had to know more. I focused intently, willing the figure to speak again. "What do you want from me?" The face contorted painfully, then vanished. For a moment, the mirror was just a reflective surface again, but a feeling of dread remained, an electric charge in the air. The tapping resumed, more pronounced and urgent than before. I turned toward the sound. It seemed to come from behind a stack of old boxes in the far corner of the attic. "This is insane," I muttered to myself, but I had to check it out. If there was something hidden there, I needed to know what it was. With my flashlight in hand, I approached the boxes, each step feeling heavier than the last. My mind raced. Maybe it was just junk, a false alarm. I took a deep breath and pushed the first box aside. Dust flew into the air, making me cough. As I moved the next one, a small tattered journal slipped out and landed with a soft thud. I bent down to pick it up, and the tapping stopped suddenly. I flipped the journal open, pages yellowed and fragile. Scrawled handwriting filled the first few pages. I felt a wave of unease wash over me as I read the words. "I've seen him in the mirror. He speaks to me. He needs something. I can't leave him. I won't leave him." My breath caught. Was this journal written by my grandmother? It felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding. The entries hinted at strange happenings, voices and shadows in the attic. The last page was smeared, but I could still make out the words, "If you find this, you must..." Suddenly, the attic light flickered back to life, and I felt it, the presence behind me again, closer than ever. I turned, the flashlight beam shaking. Nothing could prepare me for what I saw. The figure was back, its eyes now filled with something different. Anger, or maybe a kind of sorrow. It pointed toward the mirror, and in that moment a realization hit me. Was I meant to help it? Or was I awakening something that should have remained hidden? The tapping rose once more, now a desperate crescendo, as the spirit in the mirror awaited my answer. I felt trapped, caught between two worlds. I needed to act fast. What was I going to do? I took a shaky step toward the mirror, drawn by the figure's urgent gaze. The air felt charged, buzzing around me like static. I swallowed hard, uncertain if I was ready for what's next. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure in the mirror seemed to flicker, its face twisting with emotions that echoed the chaos in my mind. It raised a hand, and I could feel the weight of its longing. The tapping returned, louder, more insistent. I had to respond, but I had no idea how. "Are you trapped?" I asked, my heart in my throat. "Is that why you need help?" It nodded ever so slightly, and I could hardly believe what was happening. My grandmother's journal whispered in the back of my mind. She had felt this presence too. "What happened to you? What do you need me to do?" The figure's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Instead, a rush of energy pulsed through the air, blurring my vision. I blinked, trying to regain focus, and when I did, I noticed something flickering beside me. A small box, one I hadn't seen before, slowly emerged from behind the stacks of old boxes. It shone faintly, its edges glimmering like a beacon. Curiosity got the better of me, and I reached for it. My fingers brushed against the surface, freezing me in place with an intense rush of emotion. I felt the anguish, the yearning contained within. "What are you?" I murmured, feeling the presence behind me strengthen. The tapping escalated to a frantic rhythm, and I yanked the box open. Inside was a collection of odd trinkets, old keys, tarnished coins, and a small locket. Holding the locket felt like igniting a spark. Images flashed behind my eyes. A woman I recognized from old family photos. My grandmother. "Is this yours?" I asked. The figure in the mirror leaned closer, eyes shimmering with what could only be hope. I didn't understand, but at that moment, I knew I had to do something. I took the locket and held it up to the mirror, searching for answers in the depths of the spirit's gaze. "Is this how I can help you?" I asked, feeling a surge of energy pulse through my hand. The figure nodded eagerly, its anger giving way to desperation. Before I could process it, the world around me shifted. The light flickered violently, and a gust of wind swept through the attic, knocking over the boxes with a thunderous crash. I stumbled back, clutching the locket tightly, certain now that I had triggered something monumental. Then everything went dark. The flashlight sputtered and died, plunging me into a pitch-black abyss. My heart raced as I realized I was no longer alone. Shadows danced around me, whispering secrets that twisted in the silence. As I strained to see, a chilling voice cut through the darkness. "You shouldn't have opened that." Each word dripped with malice, sending waves of fear crashing over me. I was no longer just a spectator. I was a participant in a game I didn't understand. The tap-tap-tapping returned, frantic, but now it felt like a warning. I had woken something that wanted more than just a locket, and whatever it was angry. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding in my chest. The shadows swirled, and the voice echoed again. "You shouldn't have opened that." I strained to remember the last words I had heard from the figure in the mirror. Was this spirit behind me the same one, or was it something darker, a warning of what I had set loose? I turned back to the mirror, but the figure had disappeared, leaving only my frightened reflection before me. I could barely breathe, trapped in this haze of fear. I needed to gather my thoughts, to think straight. I reached for my flashlight, but I quickly remembered it was dead, swallowed up by the darkness. Then I heard it, a low growl resonating in the air, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. It was a sound that didn't belong to this world. I took a cautious step forward, hoping to find a way out, but the tapping returned, this time sounding all around me, louder, closer. It was coming from all directions, a desperate plea, yet marred with a sinister undertone. "Stop!" I nearly screamed, the stark realization that I had lost control of the situation washing over me. Had I disturbed a barrier between worlds? Everything felt wrong, twisted. I needed to find a way to fix this. With a surge of determination, I forced my way to the staircase leading down from the attic. My trembling hands brushed against the walls, feeling for stability amid the chaos. As I made my way down the stairs, the shadows seemed to cling to my legs, pulling me back, urging me to return to where it all began. But something was different. The air felt thicker, colder, and the whispers grew more frantic. "Return the locket, before it's too late." I couldn't tell if the voice was a reminder or a threat. Panic clawed at my throat, but I had to keep moving. Suddenly, a cold gust blew past me, causing me to stumble on the last step. I landed hard on the floor, the impact forcing a gasp from my lips. I looked up, my heart refusing to settle, and that's when I saw it. A shadow, shifting unnaturally in the corner of the dim hallway. It wasn't just a silhouette. It felt alive, pulsing with rage. I crawled backward, my fear saturating the air around me. "What do you want?" I shouted, unsure if I would receive an answer. The shadow froze, but the silence was deafening. Then, in a blink, it lunged. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the door, driven by instinct. Each thud of my heart echoed in my ears, urging me onward. I could still hear the tapping, now sounding like fingers drumming against surfaces, demanding my attention. As I reached the front door, it slammed shut. The breath caught in my chest as I turned back. The shadows had moved closer, and I could make out several forms now, wriggling, shifting apparitions with faces twisted in torment. "Leave!" I screamed, feeling tears sting my eyes. I didn't mean to. But my pleas felt useless against their collective anguish. I had unleashed something, and now it wanted me. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the floor beneath me began to tremble and a cracking sound resonated like thunder. The air vibrated and I feared the house itself was awakening, angry at my trespass. But there was one thing I knew. I couldn't stay here. I had to escape. I charged down the hallway, panic fueling my steps. The shadows hung heavy in the air, creeping closer, almost like a pack of wolves circling in. I had no plan, just a primal urge to get away. The tapping was relentless now, a cacophony that clawed at my sanity. I flung myself into the living room, but the door slammed harder this time, shaking the frame as if it had a mind of its own. I pressed my back against the wall, glancing at the windows. They were blackened, the outside world swallowed up by an impenetrable darkness. I needed light. I needed something to guide me, but all I had was a tightening knot of fear in my chest. As I looked around, my eyes fell on the old bookshelf. Dusty tomes lined the shelves, their spines cracked and fading. One caught my eye, an ancient book on the occult that I had always avoided. Supposedly it contained rituals for contacting spirits. This has to be a joke, I thought, almost laughing at the absurdity of it all. But deep down, I felt a bizarre pull toward it, like it held the answers I desperately needed. The tapping grew louder, echoing through the house as if demanding my attention. I made my way to the shelf, my breath quickening. With shaking hands, I reached for the book, pulling it off its resting place. It was heavier than I expected, filled with the weight of warnings and dark knowledge. As I opened it, the pages whispered secrets into the air, words I couldn't comprehend. My heart raced, a mix of dread and curiosity flooding my senses. Surely this had something to do with the locket. If I could just find a way to undo the chaos I had created. Then I heard it, a low hiss that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Return. It echoed deep and resonant. I looked up, and the shadows had formed a twisted mass at the edge of the room. They pulsed with anger, and I felt as though they were staring right at me. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I really going to risk everything by trying to understand this darkness? But the voice, it felt like a lifeline. If I could find a way to communicate, maybe I could reason with whatever had been unleashed. I took a deep breath, flipping through the pages until I found a passage that seemed promising. Speak to the lost. Return what is theirs. I muttered the words out loud, feeling ridiculous. The moment they left my lips, the shadows surged forward, an indistinct figure rising from their depths, taking shape before me. My heart raced. Was this the spirit from the mirror? But as its form solidified, a wave of terror washed over me. The face that looked back was no longer a benign spirit. It was twisted, filled with despair and rage, an unsettling reminder of the price of my curiosity. I'll never get out of here, I thought, panic threatening to swallow me whole. I had opened a door I couldn't close, and there was no safe way back from this choice. Suddenly, the shadow figure moved closer, its arm outstretched as if reaching for me. Return, it hissed, and I knew then it wasn't just my life at stake, it was the very balance of worlds. In that moment I realized what I had to do, but my resolve crumbled as the horror of what lay ahead crashed down on me. I needed to confront the truth and make a choice, and time was quickly running out. I felt a spine-chilling sensation as the shadow figure advanced. Return. The word slipped out of its mouth like a nightmare manifesting right before my eyes. I tried to steady my breath, clenching the book in my hands like a life raft. What did it want? What was I supposed to return? I could hardly think straight. My mind raced through everything I had done in this house, every careless action and forgotten detail. The locket in particular loomed large. Had it something to do with this? It was an heirloom, a part of my family history. But it felt wrong to even think of giving it back. What if that was what this entity wanted? Please, I rasped, seeing the darkness looming closer. What do you want? Its twisted face warped further, as if the question twisted a knife in its soul. Return. It rasped again, each syllable dripping with a weight that felt like chains binding me. I needed to act, but every nerve in my body screamed to flee. Just then, a flicker of light danced across the room. I turned, startled, to see a candle flickering in the corner, somehow untouched by the darkness that enveloped everything else. It called to me, a small beacon of warmth amidst the cold fear. Without thinking, I dashed toward it, hope clawing at my insides. I reached it and clutched the flickering flame, feeling its light push back against the shadows. The figure screeched, a horrific sound that tangled itself with pain and fury. Return! It lunged again, and I felt the air change, charged with some unseen force. In that moment, I understood. The locket was part of something much darker, something that had been lost. I needed to confront this entity, to break whatever cycle had begun. Fine, I shouted, heart pounding. If you want it, then take it. I fished the locket from my pocket, raising it high as if it could banish the darkness. The figure recoiled momentarily, the twisting shades writhing in surprise. But then it surged forward, its monstrous eyes locked onto the locket as if it could feel its power. "Return!" The voice echoed louder than ever, rattling the very walls of the room. I faltered, gripping the locket tighter. A terrible wave of despair washed over me, and I felt the weight of centuries of anguish pressing down. What had I stumbled into? This wasn't just about me anymore. The balance of something far greater was at stake. Desperation surged within me. "You want it?" I yelled again, the desperation turning to almost defiance. "Then come and get it." Before I could second-guess myself, I hurled the locket across the room, watching it arc through the air toward the figure. As it released a primal roar and lunged forward, I braced for the worst, ready to meet whatever fate awaited me. But then everything turned dark. The candlelight flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I felt myself plummeting through a void, and in that moment of chaos, the locket vanished into the shadows. My heart raced. Had I made a terrible mistake? Would it ever stop? Panic filled my chest as I screamed for help, but the darkness swallowed my words. All I could sense was silence. That's when I heard it. A whisper, soft and sinister, curling through the darkness. "You have just begun to understand." I shuddered, dread engulfing me. The shadows didn't whisper just from beyond, they echoed from within. I jolted awake, gasping for breath. The darkness still wrapped around me thick and suffocating. I was back in the attic, the flickering candle now snuffed out, leaving me in total blackness. My heart raced as I fumbled, trying to find my bearings. Had I truly just dreamed it? Or was the shadow still present? In the silence, my mind raced. I clung to the last remnants of the locket in my memory, the way its polished surface caught the candlelight. It felt like a tether to whatever had occurred. I'd thrown it. Had I unleashed something by doing that? The floor creaked beneath me, drawing my attention. I squinted into the dimness, straining to see if something moved. The attic was cluttered, littered with papers and old furniture. Dust floated in the air, and I felt an unwelcome chill creep along my spine. Then a noise broke the stillness. A soft, shuffling sound that sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. I felt a prickle of fear wash over me. This wasn't just in my head. Something was in here with me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The air felt heavy, as if the entire place was holding its breath. I waited for a response, but all that greeted me was the echo of my own uncertainty. Against my better judgment, I moved deeper into the attic, feeling along the wall for a switch. My fingers slipped over the rough wood, and I finally found it, a switch that flicked on the overhead light. Its sudden illumination revealed the full scope of the mess I had to navigate. Then I noticed it, a large, old trunk against the far wall, partially obscured by an old sheet. A faint chill wrapped around me as I drew closer. Had I missed it earlier? Or had it just appeared? Suddenly I felt compelled to lift the sheet. I couldn't explain why, but I knew it was crucial. As I pulled the sheet away, I was greeted by a heavy wooden chest, its surface etched with strange markings that looked almost alive. The air grew colder around it, and for a moment all I could hear was my pulse hammering in my ears. With trembling hands I knelt down and tried to lift the heavy lid. It creaked open slowly, revealing a glimpse of darkness inside. But then I saw something glint, a familiar shape wrapped in shadow. The locket. I gasped. No. This was impossible. How had it ended up in that chest? Was it all connected to whatever entity had just threatened me? As my fingers brushed the locket, an icy wind swept through the attic. The temperature dropped further, and I felt a presence behind me. I spun around, but the space was empty. That cold began to twist around me again, grabbing my breath and squeezing it tightly. "Who are you?" I shouted, hoping to break the silence that suffocated me. In answer, that sinister whisper returned, now more distinct and urgent. "You've only touched the surface." I should have felt more afraid, but a strange thrill surged within me. There was something here I needed to uncover, something tied to my family that demanded to be revealed. But at what cost? With renewed determination, I grabbed the locket from the chest, holding it between my fingers. I felt its pulse against my skin, and a spark ignited in my mind. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The shadows around me writhed with energy, and I sensed their anger, but I had no intention of backing down now. A choice lay before me: accept this darkness or confront it. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. If you want your answer, you'll have to show me. The air crackled, and the attic seemed to shimmer with a force unknown. I knew in that moment that whatever awaited me next would irrevocably change everything. The locket felt heavy in my hand, almost alive. The markings on the trunk pulsed with energy, and the air around me hummed. I needed to understand what this all meant. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. It wasn't just my imagination this time. I glanced around the attic, searching for any sign of movement. Dust motes drifted lazily in the cold light, but there was something else. A figure stood half-hidden behind a stack of faded boxes. My heart raced. "Show yourself," I called out, though I wasn't sure I wanted an answer. The figure shifted slightly, revealing a face I didn't recognize. A young girl with haunted eyes. She looked just as lost as I felt, trapped between worlds. "Help me," she whispered, barely audible over the creaking beams above. "Who are you?" I demanded, stepping closer. My instincts screamed at me to retreat, but I was drawn to her. Whatever connection she had to the locket felt powerful. "I was taken," she said, her voice shaky, "by what lives in the shadows. They won't let me go." The chill in the air deepened, and I struggled to maintain my composure. "You're not real," I mumbled, half convinced. "No, I am here. I can feel it. It wants you too." She pointed towards the chest, a panic creeping into her voice. "You shouldn't have opened it." The shadows swirled, dark tendrils reaching out towards me, chasing away the safety of the light. My grip on the locket tightened, a strange warmth radiating from it. I couldn't back down now. I had to understand, even if it scared me. I glanced back at the girl. "What did you take?" "Everything," she said, her voice cracking. "It feeds on fear and regret. It knows what you've done. It knows your past." Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with a mixture of longing and despair. As the shadows danced closer, enveloping her, I realized something. She wasn't just a victim. She was part of whatever had been unleashed by my actions. The locket had drawn her to me like a moth to a flame. I needed to break this chain. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, as if the shadow itself could answer. It hissed back, a sound like 1,000 whispering voices filled with rage. "In exchange," the girl murmured, her voice growing weaker, "you must learn what happened to me." Suddenly the attic began to shift around us. The walls warped, twisting into images of a dark forest, shadows writhing like serpents. I pulled back, heart racing, but a surge of defiance twisted within. "I'll find out, but not through you." Just then, the whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I shut my eyes, trying to block them out. I had to focus. That voice, the one that told me I had only touched the surface, it felt familiar. Was there a connection between her and me, something buried deep in my family history? I opened my eyes, locking my gaze onto the chest. "I don't fear you." The presence shuddered, and I felt the cold retreat slightly. The girl stumbled backward, disappearing into the shadow with a scream. I stood alone, but something had shifted. A new path lay before me, one that demanded to be followed. Then, a single chilling revelation struck me. I needed to go back to my grandmother's journals, back to the old, dusty secrets she had left behind, because whatever was haunting me had roots deeper than I could have ever imagined. With the locket in hand, I knew I was running out of time. The shadows were restless and angry, urging me to act before they consumed everything I held dear. I took a step back, heart pounding. Whatever I encountered next could unravel my world entirely. I dashed down the stairs, the urgency of my mission propelling me as I clutched the locket tightly. Memories of the girl's desperate eyes stirred something in my heart, compelling me to seek out the truth buried within my grandmother's belongings. Finding the journals felt like a race against time itself, and I focused on the living room, where I recalled stashing them in a dusty box. My hands trembled as I shoved aside stacks of forgotten items, heart pounding with each noisy scrape. When I finally found the box, I yanked it open. Inside, the familiar scent of aged paper wafted up, mixing with the musty odor of the house. I flipped through the journals frantically, pages filled with my grandmother's handwritten notes detailing strange occurrences surrounding the mirror, the same mirror that had taunted me in the attic. The entries narrated encounters with a spirit, her fears of the presence drawn to the locket, its ability to bridge realms. As I read, I realized this wasn't just the story of a ghost. It was a cautionary tale, steeped in family history and heartache. The last entries, however, chilled me. "He is restless. The pact must be fulfilled," read one. "I cannot let this darkness take me without a fight," said another. My chest tightened as I recalled the girl's pleas. Had my grandmother attempted to confront the same darkness? What promise had she made, and what would that mean for me? I felt a cold breeze. It was as if the shadows were creeping closer, drawing breath from my fear. The tapping began again, echoing through the space, but this time it was different. It was frantic, desperate. A warning. I couldn't afford to linger. I needed to unearth the truth, and I could feel the spirit's tension thickening in the air. I stumbled upon the final journal, its cover worn and fragile. Flipping through the pages, I found a passage detailing a confrontation my grandmother had with the entity. "The locket must return to its rightful place," it stated, "but it comes with a price. You will be tested. Only then can you save the one who was lost." My heart raced. The locket. I needed to return it, but to what? And to whom? Was the girl I had seen the one my grandmother spoke of? Or was she just another soul lost to the shadows, a warning for me to heed? As I pieced together the fragments of her tale, the shadows thickened around me, suffocating the light. I took a deep breath and whispered into the growing darkness, "Where do I return it?" In response, the shadows shifted, forming an outline of the attic. The air vibrated with energy. I had to go back to that cursed mirror. It was the only way. I raced up the stairs, each step heavy with dread, and burst into the attic. The mirror shone dimly, reflecting a sliver of light in its darkened depths. A bone-deep chill washed over me as I approached it, the locket pulsing in my palm. Memories of the girl flooded my mind, her desperate plea for help, and the shadows writhed in a futile attempt to force me away. "I'm not afraid," I declared, steeling my resolve against the unseen forces pressing in around me. I raised the locket high, illuminated by the flickering remnants of light. "If you want it, if you want your answers, then here it is." At that moment the air crackled, and the very fabric of the room seemed to tremble. Shadows coalesced, twisting and turning as they coiled around me. I felt their anger and sorrow, and amidst that turmoil, I felt a strange connection to the entity. Its anguish echoed my own. "Return," it whispered, a voice woven from countless others. With a surge of adrenaline, I hurled the locket toward the mirror. It caught the faintest glimmer of light before plunging into the cold depths of glass. Instantly, I felt a pull, as if the mirror was trying to siphon all the warmth from my body, and I teetered on the edge of panic. But then something shifted. The mirror rippled, and the shadows around me began to pull back, reluctant to let go. From the depths of the glass, the face of the young girl emerged. "Thank you," she mouthed, her voice faint but clear. "You broke the cycle. You freed me." As the shadows slipped away, peace washed over my heart, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else stirred beneath the surface. The mirror seemed to revert to its usual placid state, but I knew better. It wouldn't end here, not really. Standing there as the attic quieted, I felt a hollowness settle in my chest. I had escaped, for now. The truth had come at a cost, and there were still questions lingering, like echoes in a cave. What about the other spirits? Had I truly set them free, or merely disturbed their prison? I had made a choice, but at what price? I moved back into the world beyond the attic. And though I left the house behind, the memory of the girl and the darkness would permanently haunt me. Would this be the end of my encounters with the unexplainable? The edges of reality had frayed, and things that should remain hidden now danced at the edges of my consciousness. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if my grandmother is still with me, if those shadows still hover in the old house. But mostly I try not to think about it.